many people look up to you to solve their problems. Their problems. But see, I others have a saying. They say, in taking care of others, do not forget yourself. I do not need to forget myself at all. And not after spending so much time and money on electioneering. Treasury, look to yourself. I will make sure that I take care of myself and the future, because you never know. Awesome.
Good morning, Your Excellency.
Chief Parliamentarian,
yes.
How are you?
Thank you, Your Excellency.
How you doing?
Very well, Your Excellency.
Come on, have a seat. I do not need to forget myself at all.
Once again, I want to congratulate you on your great victory.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm sure you received my letter.
No.
Oh, but I did send you a letter of congratulations.
Oh, this. You see, there are enough letters of congratulations, but I don't have time to read them. But I accept your congratulations. Yes. Thank you for yours. Yes.
You see, I told my electors not to vote for me if they do not vote for Your Excellency.
You did?
Oh yes, I did. And when you won, I also know that the bandwagon effect will roll me to victory. I also won, Your Excellency.
Oh, you did?
I won, Your Excellency. And it cost me just a small fortune.
You see, ours is a great party.
A wonderful party, Your Excellency.
Yes.
A wonderful party. Once again, Your Excellency, congratulations on your great victory.
Thank you very much.
Your Excellency. Your Excellency. Your humble servant reminds you of your promises.
Promises?
Yes, Your Excellency.
Election promises?
Yes, Your Excellency.
I won't remember them. We only make those promises to get the votes. We don't mean to keep them.
What I do, Your Excellency, I do remember the promise. You said that should my constituent vote for you, you would make me the...
Make you what?
Your Excellency.
Speak to the party that makes this kind of decisions.
Yes, very well, Your Excellency. See, that is why I came to... that is why I came to speak to you, Your Excellency.
I said speak to the party.
Your Excellency.
Speak to the party.
All right, Your Excellency. Well, I should like to have the portfolio of commerce and industry. Your Excellency.
The party says, and it says,
What does the party mean, sir?
Okay, let me help you out. You see, the party considers that portfolio a very important portfolio.
Yes, sir.
A most desirable portfolio. A most desired portfolio. And I mean to give it to myself.
Your Excellency, please.
Get up. I said speak to the party.
Okay, very well, Your Excellency. I mean, my lord. Your Excellency. Well, the party should at least, consider me upon...
upon what consideration?
Well, Your Excellency, see, as one man to another, you should...
You missed the point again. You see, the party considers all these ministries a very important ministry.
I agree.
But you see, the party is a very busy person.
Yes.
And some of these ministries, he will give out for nothing. He will not give out for nothing.
I understand now, Your Excellency. I understand. Well, in that case, I should send 50,000 soldiers to the party.
The party assumes he had nothing.
100,000, my lord. Your Excellency. And 200,000 soldiers.
Hey, now you are talking.
Thank you very much. The soldiers will be at the party headquarters later today. Yes, Your Excellency.
So, you didn't come with any of them?
Just the 50,000 soldiers for starters.
The party is interested. Hey, but see, no announcements will be made until all the soldiers are at home.
Oh, yes, Your Excellency. Yes, Your Excellency.
You see, I've always known you to be a good party man. And I'm very sure that you're going to justify the trust that the party is going to put in you.
Oh yes, Your Excellency. You see, the party knows me well, Your Excellency. All I ask is a free hand to run the place.
When you are the boss, you are the boss. You ask the boss, you are the boss. You have a free hand, absolutely.
When I'm the boss, I'm the boss.
Yes.
You see, this is a very wonderful music to my ears. I should not disturb you.
No problem. Good morning.
When you are the boss,
you are the boss. You act. But 1 minute. Now speaking for myself.
Yes, Your Excellency.
I don't know if I can get something, just something small for some drink. Nothing much, just something.
You mean for the party?
Myself now.
Your Excellency. Yes. Good morning, Your Excellency.
Good morning.
You're the boss.
Ask the boss. You are the boss.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
You are just starting.
Hello, good morning. And that is just as much as we are able to take from that piece. I mean, just to buttress what we want to discuss here this morning, I'd like to welcome two speakers. Maazi, let me add that to it. Maazi Okechukwu Okekejo, all the way from Suwon, South Korea. And of course, Mr. Makinde Adeniran, FTA, who is here stepping into the very big shoe of the national president of the the National Association of Nigerian Theatre Arts Practitioners. I mean, this is just, this is meant to be a very straight to the point, brief discussion as we begin to look at the issue of corruption from different angles. Aroja Royal Theatre has been involved in a project that is called the Interactive Theatre Campaign on Good Governance and Transparency, which is as a sub-grantee of MacArthur Foundation. Yeah, though that has been hampered at the moment by the pandemic, which means that, like you just saw us there at the University of Abuja, we have gone around about 12, 13 universities and colleges of education and polytechnics around the North Central, where we are confined by the provision of that agreement of that project. So what we have done over time is to take the production, like you just saw it, without the aesthetics of theater, without every other thing, but just take the message to the young people in the tertiary institutions. And after they have seen the play, The Will, written by Ken Saro-Wiwa, like we are doing today, we then engage them in corruption to see just what exactly do they think about the issue of corruption and the need to fight corruption and the role of the young people in this fight and all whatnot. So I welcome our two speakers here this morning, and I do believe that in the next 30, 40 minutes, thereabout, you will be able to help enlighten us further, especially on the topic of discussion for today, which is the socio-cultural perspective to the fight against corruption. As you are aware, I mean, there is a whole lot of crisis going on at the moment about the arrest or no arrest of the EFCC chairman. I mean, that's the man who is supposed to be the one hunting the corrupt people. At the moment, he is being hunted for corruption himself. That we cannot ascertain at the moment, but that tells you that what we are discussing here today is of great importance. And so I'd like to welcome Maazi Okeke Izuchukwu Job. It's good evening to you in Korea, while it's still good morning for us here in Nigeria.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, so thank you for coming around. This is live on our YouTube channel for those that would see it live as it is on, or those that will get to see it, later when we are done. Let me start this way. Let me start with Mr. Makinde. If can you unmute, sir? Mr. Makinde, sir.
Yeah.
Oh.
Good morning.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Good
Thank
morning,
you.
Sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes. I like to put this across, sir, to say,
yes,
even the definition of corruption itself has been a very big challenge. Not that it should be, but you would remember there was this whole crisis about this definition where the former president was said to have said stealing is not corruption.
Corruption,
So
yes.
what would be your definition of corruption?
Well, definition of corruption for me, it's simply put, and it can lead to so many other things, is just bad character. Bad character. Because I've happened to be involved in some radio drama where we got to discuss corruption in the nation and how it operates. And I find out from that drama, from all the discussion, research work, and all of that, it's just simply pointing to bad character. Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me, please?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's just simply pointing to bad character, because the one who steals money, in this case, right? You find out that it is bad greed or something that is leading to that, whether selfishness, greed, and all of that. You know, it's bad character. It's someone who is applying bad character to a normal, simple, humane situation. Someone who has not got, you see, not caring for other people, because when we break down corruption, really, there is the financial part of it. There is the one that affects the society, not necessarily that you are stealing, but what you are doing, right, has changed the fabric, and in effect, is changing the life of people into, you get someone who steals, right, money is corruption. Someone who is flouting law is corruption. And all of this, if you break them down, it all points to bad character. Someone who is bereft of good character. So these are all the sum up that go, and it goes even, bad leadership is about corruption. And when you break bad leadership down, you find out that these people, because I say this, when we talk about politicians and we condemn them and we say all whatnot, and I look at people, I say, you are condemning the leaders now, as if the leaders are from heaven. They didn't come from heaven. They come from amongst us. The little things that we condone today, the bad characters we condone when they are amongst us, is what eventually we go to vote for in the poll. And they go there without bad character, without ill manner, and they go to lead you. At the end of the day, you shout corruption. We get to break it down. And that is why it is all encompassing. When you talk of character, it's all engulfing. It puts all of us to check ourselves. When during the military era, I think it was the time of Buhari, Major General Buhari that time. That was when war against indiscipline came up. What was it all about? It was all about corruption. But then we were treating it like bad character. We were treating it merely as character that can be controlled. So we were flogged into lines. It is all about corruption, easily flouting laws, easily taking other people for granted. Because those who are stealing in place of power, they are merely taking their citizens, the masses, for granted. Finish. So for me, I would just simply put it, that is bad character. The bad character that we have refused to tame will come back to us in form of corruption. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Makede. And Mazi Okeke, I answer once again. Yes, halting the wheel of corruption. The desire of the common people, the masses, is to find a way to put an end to corruption, because it is quite an obstacle to our demand for good governance. And so we are talking about halting the wheel of corruption, a socio-cultural perspective. I mean, what would come across to you, how much of influence does our society, does the environment, how exactly do they influence this issue of corruption we are talking about, whether as the corrupt person or in the fight against it?
Okay, when you, for people like me in the field of academics, there are lots of issues that oftentimes when you want to define them, they break, you have to look at a large perspective of opinions that are out there. And when you try to harmonize them, a discourse like this, you have less time to be able to do that. But if I am going to like point out a few things. For instance, we are looking at corruption, and then there are lots of arguments in the field of social sciences as to what exactly is the main factor of corruption. Is it cognitive realities or social cultural realities? Or just okay, we can put cultural a little bit to the side because cultural comes in because of this discourse. But let's look at the social reality. Is it social reality or is it just cognitive? There are not agreements as to how these things work. But one of the dominant theoretical perspective is what we call the rational choice theory of corruption, which looks at corruption from the point of view of rational decisions that people take as a way of as a calculation for self-interested behavior. That is to say, they look at all the choices that are open and they decide to take the choice that is based in their own personal interest. And I think rational choice kind of covers a lot of fields, a lot of things we could define as corruption today. Because at the end of the day, it is just about my self-interest, how it pays me, and not how it pays us. But then the question now is, who does not wish himself well? Who doesn't want the best for himself? So if you look at that, it now takes you back to the other issue that actually, when we define corruption, it becomes a personal moral issue because you cannot say that something is bad or that something is corrupt if you are not able to have a matrix to measure it. And often, the matrix with which we measure what is good or bad or corrupt is actually the matrix of morality. And that is where the question is. Morality itself is a concept that itself is set within a culture, which of course is good as we're bringing this issue up within the context of culture. Now, morality is set by culture. Therefore, what is moral to us may not be moral. For instance, we have the current issues of the day, like gay marriage, or like these are some issues that people in Africa might consider to be corrupt. The corrupt tendency for a person, for a man, to like to have a sexual relationship with another man. But in other culture, these things are accepted. So now, if we take it from that point of view, that we can situate corruption into what is acceptable in a culture or what is not acceptable in that same culture. Now, we now come to the situation that we face in our own country, because when we say corruption, 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 the question is, if you ask me, we have a very big problem, and that problem is, how do we situate what we mean by corruption? We all think we have an idea of what it is. Okay, if you steal money from government, if you do this, if you do that, but the question is, why is it that it is not abating? Over the years, despite all our efforts, why is it not abating? You discover that it is because we have not been able to find a context for our own corruption, because as I can readily tell you, is because the moral basis or the social cultural basis for us to situate our own corruption definition does not exist. It doesn't exist. For instance, when you say what is Nigerian culture, that is, what is the cultural context that can be defined as Nigerian cultural context? It doesn't really exist. I mean, uh, anybody has their own argument to make anyway, but we, after about 60-something years of our existence, some people, or 50-something years of existence as an independent nation, some people would believe that there is something we can call a Nigerian kind of culture, that has evolved. But you could define this culture in, in pop culture. You can define it in entertainment. You can define it in maybe transactional politics and everything. But when you are talking about the wholesome experience of a people, we don't have it. Because let me give you an instance. In Kohlberg's theory of morality, Kohlberg is one of the Western psychology theorists. He made mention about different kinds of theory of morality. And one of them is what we call preconventional morality, which involves compliance to rules to avoid punishment and gain rewards. That is to say, there are kinds of morality you implement because you want to, avoid punishment, and then because you want to gain rewards. Now, in Nigeria, where we exist, in our cultural context, do you have any kind of centralized moral base to say, I will want to avoid corruption because I don't want to have some kind of punishment? No. The only reason why I want to avoid corruption is because probably I want to avoid some problems with the law. But that in itself is just existential. You want to avoid problem. It is not an all-conquering issue that is based on your belief system, that is situated within your culture, that you know what is wrong, that you don't want to do it because you know that this culture we reward you for doing good, and also ostracize you for doing bad. So the big problem which I'm trying to paint here for us, or the big picture, is we don't really have a social cultural setting or social cultural basis on which for us to define corruption. And I'm going to tell you, because of this, it has been very, very difficult to deal with corruption in Nigeria, because the only thing that stops you is just your fear of being caught. It's not because of deep-seated, cultural persuasions that this is bad, because it doesn't exist as yet.
Thank you, Mazi. And I will just quickly throw that back to Oga Makinde. I mean, you have heard him. I don't know what will be your take on this issue.
Well, I want to slightly differ from that. I like the analysis down to how moral this. But see, in our culture, right?
Yeah.
Our tribes, it's defined. Corruption is defined in all of our culture across the nation. And I dare say across Africa, there is a place where the culture frowns deliberately about corruption. which is in guise of Iwa Buburu. I'm a Yoruba man.
Yeah.
So I know definitely that in Yoruba culture, right, there is no place for corruption. It actually dealt with it. That Iwa Ibajeni, Iwa tó ń tini lójú. That's the way the Yoruba word Iwa tó ń tini lójú. That is a character, right, that brings shame, not only on you, but on your entire family. That's how the Yoruba. So, and I believe the same thing applies in Igbo culture. So these things, they have a place. It is the contemporary world that is trying to make too much of corruption. And we are trying to give it a definition, right? And trying to make it an institution. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, it has become an institution. And we are beclouding ourselves with all kinds of meaning of corruption and all of that. It is too far. It's all about bad character. It's all about ill-mannered. It's all about a morality that has become decadent. That's what it's all about. Because for you to get to a point where you become shameless, that is when you careless about other people. Even in the Bible, right? They said there are two important this thing of all the 10 commandments. There are two important ones: love your neighbor as yourself, and love your God, your maker. Those, and if you check that, if you break that down, what you will find ultimately is about good character. Caring for other people goes down. It is only when you care for other people that you won't go right and be reckless with what belongs to them. It is only when you care for people that you won't set out to kill them. It is only when you care for people that you won't have racism. When you care for other people is when we won't have tribalism. So when we begin to cut it down, for me, that was why because trying to give all kinds of definition that I've heard in the past about coloring corruption and trying to give it one huge, making it an institution, even from our definition of it, right? I just look at it and I'm usually dumbfounded. I said, this thing is just about bad character. And that is why in Nigeria today, I bring it down to, if we are not changing the orientation of every Nigerian, not just the leaders, right? Corruption will continue to get big because it seems we have replaced, right, bad behavior, bad character and what is 419? 419 is becoming a beautiful thing in some sector of Africa. Look at the issue of hush puppy.
Hush puppy.
What would you call that? How can someone be priding himself in stealing money, stealing the wealth of other people, of other nations? And it goes all about on Instagram and all of that. What is that? That's corruption. That is coming from bad character. But the world has celebrated it. The world, they are celebrating it. So they are trying to make it an institution, or they've made it an institution. So this is where I have, and that's why I always say, I'm yet to see, right, the culture in the world that does not frown at bad character. The Ministry of this thing, National Orientation Agency, will do a lot if we have to change the thinking. Because first, right, it's about psyche. We have to change the head because we cannot identify what is good from what is bad anymore. Yeah. And that is why corruption is easy. Every leader, no, don't let me say every. Most of the leaders now going into position, the first thing that is in their head is, let me go and make my own money. Let me go and see how, and it's about corruption. The market woman who is in the market, who will pilfer money off his mates, all in the name of taxation. It's corruption. It's bad manner, greed, selfishness. All these are elements. And if you check greed, if you check selfishness, all these are elements in our culture, which our culture definitely frowns at. So I wouldn't know which other way to go. And that's why I say I would differ slightly from OKK's point of view and trying to say there's no this thing for it in our socio-cultural. No, I think there is. We are just trying to build a castle out of it. It is nothing other than bad character, bad behavior. It doesn't have to do with money alone. It has to do with everything. Everything that is not right, is corruption. That is deliberately done not to be right because someone wants to gain from it, whether financially, whether position-wise, whether it's corruption. And that's the way I'll put it. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Makinde. And okay, I'm back to you. Yes, you are a Nigerian, but incidentally, you are resident in Korea as we speak. And I'm sure you would want to agree with me that every society has had its own share of corrupt practices, one way or the other. I can't remember the name of this gentleman at the moment, but I remember that in 2003, while I was in Korea, there was this very popular a Korean business mogul who was being chased around by the law agency. Then, in fact, he was arrested on the eve of the day I was to leave Korea. So the point I'm trying to make is that whether it is America, whether it is England, whether it is Nigeria or Ivory Coast, every society has got its own share of corruption or corrupt practices. I mean, what is being done differently since we are looking at the society, against this issue of corruption now? What is it that is being done differently in Korea? Because going by your position earlier on, I need to be able to substantiate it as it's practically that, look, these are the things that have been done in Korea, for instance, that you think that Nigeria need to do or that Nigeria is not doing, which is the reason why this is at a very, high stake. Yeah. Remember the other day they said we are fantastically corrupt. I know fantastically is an adjective, but then let us put it into perspective.
Okay, let me just start by saying that there is this thing about human society. Actually, there is, unlike every other thing we study in science, the only thing we have found complex is the human society. In fact, when we work on algorithm that we used to create some of these applications, and then we used to do all these. We used to solve mathematics. Most times algorithms can make a lot of predictions very easily, like facial recognition algorithm, or those of us that work in social sciences that, if you are able to get your data and the data is correct and you log it into the computer, it gives you answers that are correct, or sometimes 85%, 95% accuracy. But when you talk about humanity, you get a lot of complexity. And therefore, it means that what you can situate in one context goes to another context and it is entirely odd, it's entirely off. And it's very difficult because humanity is difficult to predict. Now, before I go there, I have to refer myself back to what I said before, because it needs to be understood, because it also helps to answer the question you asked me. When I say that we no longer have a cultural context to situate our corruption, I do not really mean that we don't have our own cultures. We do. But the problem here is that I am an Igbo person, and then like every one of us here, we have Yorubas, everybody has where they came from. If we had our culture, the real culture that we matched from, in fact, the traditional Igbo's cultural setting didn't even have jail. We didn't have jail. It's like, okay, somebody did something bad and he was arrested and he was put in jail. It didn't exist. There was no there was no social organized kind of punishment because there was a cultural system that ensured checks and balances for crime. That is to say, that there are gods, there are oracles, there are this where you can go swear an oath, I didn't kill this person, and if you did, you are dead, that kind of thing. This cultural setting, this system was created to regulate, because when you look at corruption, like where I started, I said, are we looking at a social problem generally? No. Corruption is first and foremost a cognitive issue. Should I do this? Should I not do it? Now, if I don't have to do it, it may not just be because of what my society thinks or because of, it is going to be shameful. No, I have to do a cognitive processing whereby I ask myself, will the reward be better than the punishment? If I do this, if I get away with it, will I be much more rewarded than will I be punished? If I pass through this psychological process, then I will now know whether I will go ahead or I will not. Now, you discover that in the natural instinct of man is, like I mentioned earlier, is to go for that which pays him. Now, we have to acknowledge the nature of man. Jesus in the Bible says that the heart of man is very, very evil. That is where you stay. So now, when you look at this, the natural instinct of man is to just be very selfish, serve himself. Now, the next thing you now ask yourself is, where then does culture come in? Culture actually comes in not to help us, or like, okay, I don't want to be ashamed or whatever. No, what culture does for us is to regulate the nature in man. Because if you are able to understand this, you will know the reason why corruption in Nigeria does not stop, it increases. Is because the reward for it has over the years outstripped the punishment that comes with it. And because of this, you do not expect it actually to stop tomorrow. So even despite all that we say, the rationale, as we are talking now, there are people in Abuja now, there are various people in all offices in Nigeria now, still going on because the reward, far outstrips the punishment. So if we had, when we were colonized, we lost our culture, or we lost the capacity to enforce morality in our own cultural base. There is nothing with which you can judge me, an Igbo person in Abuja today. In Nigeria today, there's nothing you can blackmail me. You can say you are a Christian, you are doing this, But there is no cultural metrics that exists anymore in our culture to judge me or to judge you in Nigerian context. If it is Yoruba land, just Yoruba people, Yoruba nation, and you do something, there is something within the culture. In fact, that when you think about it, you will not even like to commit the crime because you know that you can't go through this. And that brings me back to your question about Korea. As you know, right as we're talking now, the immediate past president of this country is in jail. If you bring her to Nigerian context, the only way to say is that she went to jail for nothing, that she didn't do anything. Because the accusation against her was that her friend was influencing the government, that her friend was using her influence, or what we call influence peddling. Okay, and the friend has a foundation, and big businesses that know that she's the friend of the president were donating to her. What is bad about it? In America, people do this. Okay, Clinton Foundation doesn't receive so much money because she's no longer in power. So why was she receiving when she was in power? Because people were donating because she has influence. But in this country, the cultural context of this country says that it is not correct. It is not a good thing to do. And because of that, she lost power. Not only that she lost power, she's put in jail for 32 years. And apart from her, about the last 5 or 6 presidents of this country, about 3 committed suicide. They died. They committed, that is, when this issue came down, they themselves chose to die than to stay and face what was coming. And one of them, like you read the history of each one of them. The one of them I read, he didn't do anything also. Some people, some government, some business people, or some friends of the family donated money, gave money to his wife, with which the wife sent one of their son to study in America. Okay, he claims he didn't actually know that those people made such donation gave such gifts to the family. Okay, and he finished his tenure. There was no corruption linked to him until he finished. But the issue is that prosecution is now saying that, look, your wife actually collected some money from people, and he began to argue that it's not true. And then as the investigation was going, he summoned his family and said, look, tell me if this thing is true. And they say, yes, it's true actually. And he wrote the nation an apology letter, went to the mountain behind his house and fell off from the cliff, and he died. But that somebody gave a gift to your wife, is it a crime? No, it is not. But in the cultural context here, it is a very big thing. That is to say, in collectivist culture of Asia, you don't want to bring shame on your family. And when shame comes, you have to remedy it. So this man decided these people that died actually chose to die so that they will remedy the shame. It's not because they chose, they love it dead, but they knew that this shame will be there. It will be a stigma if they didn't kill it. In fact, it is honorable. So that the nation will now feel that this man has showed enough remorse. Now, in Nigeria, think about it. As we're talking right now, you can get angry, you can do everything, but if you do not accept the empirical reality, you cannot find a solution. And that is where the problem is. We don't have an empirical, we don't have an empirical judgment of the state of what happens to our corruption in Nigeria now. Okay, we are not judging, we are judging based on sentiment and this. No, let's face it. For instance, if we are able to say, this is my position, our entire socio-cultural system on which you could have based the idea of dealing with corruption was corroded by virtue of colonization. A nation was created and given to us. And under this context, under this Nigerian context, we can't enforce corruption. Why? Because there is nothing with which the standard to judge us has been taken away. If in an Igbo setting right now, and I am doing something evil, and I am bound within the system to be judged by the realities of this, by the apparatus that exists within the culture, then I will think about my father, I will think about my family, I will think about honor, I will think about everything that is worth. So if I'm judging, if I'm measuring, if I'm passing through the cognitive process of whether to do this or not, I will think through all these things before I will go ahead. But now, with Nigeria, there is a kind of disconnect between us, okay, between the moral fabrics where we're coming from and the nation that we're given. And therefore, the only processing I pass through if I'm a Nigerian today is whether if I do this, it's going to pay me. I mean, the profit, the penalty will my benefit be more than the penalty I'm going to receive, even if I am caught or being punished. And then if I judge it right, then my mind tells me to go ahead, especially when other people do this thing and they also get away with it. So we now come back to it. You can get angry. Like I said, you can get angry. I've been living in this country for close to 7 years. And I have learned something about this country. When you are given an assignment, you do it. If you are told to assist somebody, or you are told you are given in fact, even when you are volunteering in Korea, they pay you for volunteering. That is, they don't pay you what your services are worth, but they still pay you for volunteering. Say, because you are doing this for us, take this. Because they know that sacrificing time and money means something. Okay? It also means that if you are given any responsibility in this country, if you are going to be able to do it, you do it. And you do it at the terms agreed that you are going to do it. If you are not going to do it, say you are not going to do it. But this idea that, for instance, you are going to be in a position and you're not going to do what you are told to do, it doesn't happen. Or that if you are rendering the service that you employ to render, then you expect people that are coming for that service to be paying you individually again after you already paid for it. It doesn't happen. And across border, you never walk into an office or bank or any establishment where you are supposed to do something and you come there and the person sitting there is expecting you to give him something before he starts doing something, or after you have done some, after he or she may have rendered the service, expect you to give him or her something before you leave. It doesn't happen. You just come, you do what you're supposed to do, he does what he's supposed to do, and then everybody parts ways. Okay. And this culture considers that anything beyond this is a shame, is a humiliation on your person, is a humiliation on your family. And nobody wants to be associated with that. Why? Because it is the basic culture of Korea. So now, like I said, if you push this to our own setting, what exactly is the cultural orientation of Nigeria right now? You know, like I'm saying, oh, something went amiss. Something went amiss. I'm a Christian, and I say, I would have preferred that we have the cultural checks and balances that we had. You know, like in those days, you hear it, Igbo people, you know, these rumors, you read it in this, somebody swindled somebody, and then he decided to take him to the oracle. And then the person, I have an experience. The person who swindled the person learned that this person is going to the oracle. He is the one that picked the phone call, and phone that was calling him all day. He didn't want him to get there before he rectified the error, because he rectified the problem, because he already is afraid that if this person reaches the oracle, he himself will be dead. You see that? So therefore, this system becomes a cultural check on his capacity to be wicked or to act in very selfish manner. So I am not saying generally that we don't have culture. What I'm trying to say is that maybe a system we're given by colonialism and new religion and new system, you know, created a disconnect that the traditional checks gave to us. And we don't have such a thing now. So it is very difficult to enforce enforce the will of law on corruption issues, you know. And it's also difficult for individuals to be able to resist the urge to be corrupt, the urge to do for cultural tendencies, because this system is too loose for that such a check to be applied individually. Thank you.
And we have another Mazi in the house. Mazi Uche, Sam, Ayamele, I salute you. Thank you for joining us. And very quickly, as we begin to wrap up, Mr. Makinde, sir, My question here now would be that, are we now saying that the fight against corruption in Nigeria is a hopeless one? I'll quickly cite this example before you respond. In the course of our tour of tertiary institution, we would give out a questionnaire for the students, to a pretext that they will fill before the show, and the one they will fill after the show. And then when we finish, we collect back, and we discover that after the show, a lot of them are no longer interested. They just throw away the paper. And we engaged some in talk, and they said, look, we are this corruption talk, corruption fight. Even the people, the masses, are no longer interested in this issue. And we agree, we know what damage it has done and what damage it is doing. You talked about National Orientation Agency. Not much seems to be happening. So how hopeless is the situation when it comes to the attempt to put an end to corrupt practices in our society?
Thank you so much. It's every situation is redeemable, but those who are in charge must live up to the expectation. It is unfair when we begin to pour our anger on the new generation. It is very unfair. I like the narration of Mr. Okeke now about South Korea. Look how they upgraded, the leadership upgraded and updated their cultural practices, and they execute it. That was simply what is going on. And then every other person fell in line. You just have to, because this is how it should be. You get, and there is one thing I picked up again in what he said. Not that there is no set rules, set guide that we can still follow. There is, everybody just chose to ignore it. We ignore it for our different selfish reasons. And that's why I put corruption down to the simplest factor that everybody can understand. The simplest factor. I try not to wave it so much so that somebody can easily say he's misunderstanding it. No, I put it to the simplest factor. Bad character. That's the only thing that will make you. And the only way that can work is when the leadership. It is as simple as the leadership. Again, I try to dodge that sense of, colonialism has come to distort a whole lot of things about us. Yes, but they've left us for 40 years plus, 50 years plus. If our leadership have been serious enough, we would have turned back some things. So it boils down to the leadership. In the recent past, I say, no, everything starts from the bottom. If we get ourselves right from bottom, how many are people in the leadership across the country? States, local, and they are not up to 2 million. Do you want to tell me that 200 million cannot take care? But do you know what? The so-called 2 million or less than that have so disregarded, right, those things that they should have upheld to keep the society sane, just for their selfish reason, and it's permeated down that all of us now, that is what we do. Even to the smallest of us, that is what we do. So the bad things have now been seen as the good things. In fact, some of them will laugh at you if you try to do the good thing. They laugh at you because you are perhaps the only one out of 10 or 20 that will be doing that good thing. So it's become, we have lost the real identity of what is called a sane society. So it goes back to the leadership that until we are able, like the Koreans, from what Mr. Okeke, like the Koreans, if we are able to uphold those cultural practices that upheld the fact that corruption is alien to human life. It is simple. Uphold it, upgrade it, and use it in governance system. Simple. We don't have to go and swear in anyway. The Koreans don't. In the olden days, sword, they kill you instantly from their history that we are harakiri. You commit harakiri and all of that. But it's been upgraded. It's been upgraded that they understand the implication of shame, not only on themselves as an individual, but on the collective of the family. And there can be nothing great than a man understanding the implication of the shame, as small as it is, that you bring to your family. Because that's the bottom line of corruption. But we seem to have, we seem to have dressed it in borrowed clothes. We seem to have made it a culture of elegance to steal. Those who steal now, they are the one who takes over. Those who can manipulate are the one who takes over the leadership. So and what do you expect? If it's a free thing up there, then the society and this is what it is. This is what it is. So I think upgrading those cultural practices that frown at corruption, any form of corruption, any form of shameful act, upgrading them and returning them back into governance, right? And make them contemporary. There and then, right, we will have a way to go. Thank you. Jerry, are you still there, please?
Makinde?
Yes.
Yes, I am still there. I'm with you. Thank you for that submission. And Mazi Okeke,
Yes.
I'm just going to take your last word. But before I do that, let me, Professor Niyo Shundare, penned a poem, some 2 years ago when the judiciary, was accused of corruption and all of that, and he called it, "Where shall I put it, my Lord?" We are going to take that poem now. I don't know if Eimofe is still there. Eimofe?
Yeah.
Okay, if you are there, let us take the poem. Let's take the poem now.
We are listening.
I think Eimofe's
My Lord.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here now. My Lord, please tell me where to keep your bribe. Do I drop it on your vulnerable chambers? Or carry the heavy booty to your immaculate mansion? Shall I bury it in the capacious water tank, in your well-laundered backyard? Or will it breathe better in the septic tank? Since money can deodorize the smearless crime, shall I hold it up in the attic, between the ceiling and your lofty roof? Or shall I conjure the walls to open up and swallow this sudden bounty from your honest labor? Shall I give 1 billion to each of your paramours? The black, the light, the Fanta yellow. They surely know how to keep the loot in places too remote for the sniffing dog. Or shall I use the particulars of your anonymous maidservants and servants with their names on overflowing bank accounts? Why they famish like ownerless dogs? Shall I hold it all to your village? In the valley, swallow up the hugest jeep, and penury leaves a scar on every house. My lord, it will take the fastest machine many, many days to count this booty, and lucky bank bosses may help themselves to a fraction of the loot. My lord, tell me where to keep your bribe. My lord, tell me where to keep your bribe. The last hope of the common man has become the last bastion of the criminally rich. A terrible plague bestrides the land, beset by rapacious judges and venal lawyers. Behind the antiquated wig and the slavish glove, the penguin gown and the obfuscating jargon is a rot and riot whose stench is choking the land. Behind the rituals and rotary rigmaroles, old antiques connive with new tricks. Behind the prim and proper costumes of masquerades, corruption stands, naked in its insolent impunity, for sale to the highest bidder, interlocutory and perpetual injunctions. Opulent criminals shop for pilot judges, protect the criminal, and election petitions, gold mines, and bottomless booty. All hail a buyable bench and conniving bar. $1 million in their lordship's bedroom. 1 million euros in the parlor closet. Countless naira beneath the kitchen sink. Our courts are fast running out of Ghana must goes. The temple of justice is broken in every brick. The roof is roundly perforated by termites of grafts. My lord, tell me where to keep your bribe. Judges doze in the courtroom, having spent all night counting money and various gifts, and the Chief Justice looks on with tired eyes, as corruption assaults his gavel. Crime pays in this country. Corruption has its handsome rewards. Just one judgment sold to the richest bidder will catapult judge and lawyer to the billionaires club. The law, they say, is an ass, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. But the law in Nigeria is a vulture, fat on the cash and carry-on of murdered conscience. Wọ́n gbègbí Falare, wọ́n gbàre fẹ́lẹ́bí. They kill our trust in the common good. These monsters of mammon in their garish gowns, unhappy the land where jobbers are judges, where impunity walks the street like a large invincible demon. Come Sunday, they troop to the church. Friday, they mount their mantra in pious masks, but they pervert justice all week long and dig us deeper into the hellish hole. Nigeria is a huge corpse with milling maggots on its wretched hulk. They pray every day, they pray every night for the endless decomposition of our common soul. My most honorable Lord, just tell me where to keep your bribe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was good. That was one bed Malari.
Thank you, Imofe.
One bed
Exactly, the Anglophone Yoruba, you had it too.
Yes, one bed Falari, one bari felebi.
One
Making the
beer
guilt guiltless. Making the guilt guiltless and the guiltless guilty.
Yeah. Thank you, Imofe, and thank you, Mr. Makinde. Mazokeke, I want to say a very big thank you to you as I just very briefly, because we need to run now.
Yes.
What would be your last take on this?
Okay,
very briefly.
There was a book I read. That's a magazine I used to subscribe from Germany. Then one of the editions they sent to me, I read an article there, and that started with the first sentence. I don't know the title, but I know the first sentence. It says, "Mono-economics is dead." And then he began to make a lot of expounding on that idea that if you want to look at economics from the point of view of just studying this, directly focusing on economics without looking at all the branch-offs and effects like politics, commerce, and everything, that you're not going to be able to do anything. worthwhile. And in the same way, I have over the years come to know a lot of issues we discuss today, every day, has a lot of interconnections here and there. And when you like mono study of anything is dead. I know, like, we can mention about leadership and that. Okay, how can you expect leadership to change the system when leadership itself get to where they are by corrupting the system? For instance, all this, our Nigerian politicians, from Tinubu to Buhari to every one of them, they got there because they rigged the system. And if it rewards them for what they did, do you expect them to change the system? Then if you do that, then you're a dreamer. You know that it's not going to happen. What I do say anyway is like my own solution, what I want to bring on the table is a little bit wayward, but less for me. In America, or in all the countries of the world, this is what they call conservative politics. It's not exactly the kind of politics we have in Africa because our politics is not defined by ideology. But over the years, elsewhere in the world, governments want to take more power from the people. But one thing we have discovered, or I have personally experienced or seen, is that the more power concentrates, the more corruption builds. I don't know how Nigeria is going to do it, but Nigeria can actually, solve half of its own corruption problem if they manage to tear down its government and have small government. Small government, now what I'm trying to say is I do not believe anyway that corruption will go entirely. It's not possible because human nature cannot change. Like I said, the cognitive processing that goes with corruption means that it operates at the micro level, each individual. But when we are looking for solution to organic systemic corruption, one of the ways we can deal with it is to reduce the concentration of power. Because when power concentrates, resources also concentrate with it. And when resources concentrate, people naturally will be scrambling for it. And in the process of trying to get a piece of the show, they do what? They do corrupt things. I do think, for instance, that if we don't have all our resources in Abuja, if some of them are in Oyo, some of them in Ekiti, some of them, and they are smaller, I don't have to go to Abuja for it and have more competitors. I will be in the Anambra, probably Nimo, but Nigerian system concentrates a lot of power at the center. And the concentration of power at the center concentrates a lot of corruption also. And it's a big problem. Like I said, I do not think that we are going to be able to deal with it permanently. I also think that if we deconcentrate power, we can come at the lower level where our cultural context is more practical. For instance, if you, Jerry, you are from Ekiti, if the money of Ekiti is in Ekiti state and you go to Ekiti to collect it, you are not going to be as brazen as you are in Abuja, because you will be more mindful because the cultural context is a little bit more closer to you than that. Okay, what would be said of the Adeshewo family if you are involved in such a heinous activity? It is close at home. So, but I don't know how is a tall order in politics to ask politicians to yield power. But if you ask me, that is where we have to go. And it's very easy by legislation. So, but the problem with Nigeria now is that people, there are no ideological basis for politics in Nigeria. People just contest elections under any banner they see. And if you vote for them here, if they are not satisfied, they move to another party, all those things. So even if you are going to vote, you don't even know whether you're voting for anything. That you just have somebody there representing you, someone with charisma, something you like.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is my own little input.
Thank you. And thank you. Very quickly, I will just go to Mr. Makinde for your last word.
Yeah, majority of what I would love to say is what Mr. Okeke has really mentioned. If those who are benefiting from the leadership won't allow the system to change, then they are giving room for revolution, for all kind of agitation. That is where all those things come in, because these are options. Even in Nigeria today, there are all kinds of silent agitation going on. So it's either they continue in their corrupt way, or you give room to all those agitation in whatever form it will come. So they have to pick between one of those two. Let me just put it that way for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Makinde. Thank you, Mazi Okeke Izuchukwujobu. Like I said, we have another Mazi quietly in the house. I salute you. And madam, I'm only seeing the phone make Galaxy C7. I don't know. We have another guest in the house, but I don't know the name. I had asked in the chat room. I want to appreciate us. I mean, for Aroja Royal Theatre, this enriches what we are doing, because once COVID is done, we are not even going to wait for COVID. We are going to chase COVID. And in chasing COVID too, we are preparing to continue this campaign. Our target audience for this campaign is the younger generation of Nigeria. And like we are talking about culture now, it needs that we need to start, taking our young people back to that. We are not taking them back in terms of the retrogression, but to that very robust cultural tradition that we have in the past, that checks corrupt practices, just like the cases we have in Korea. We have had situation here too where people had to end it because they don't want to face shame. That is what brought about this proverb that says death before dishonor, that we all talk about. So there are people who are still as honorable as that. So I want to say a very big thank you to us all on behalf of Aroja Royal Theatre. This is on our YouTube, and we are going to share the link later. The idea of this is to get more input and experiences into what we are doing as we prepare to resume our tour of tertiary institutions with this anti-corruption campaign. So we want to say a very big thank you to you. Next week, Tuesday, we are also looking at a religious perspective of this. And incidentally, both of you here will make for pastor and bishops, because you also allude to some of those religious aspects of this thing. So we are having a gentleman pastor here next week and an imam. We want to look at this from the religious perspective, and what is the role of our religious institution? How well have they played that role, or how well have they aided corrupt practices in Nigeria? So I want to say a big thank you to us until we meet again. And we have a couple of videos on our YouTube. You can also find time to visit our YouTube and see some of those videos. More will be coming on it as we continue to, ease up from this lockdown. Thank you. God bless, and see you another time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mazi.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you, Mazi.
Our regards to Mr. President, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.